What's happening, Junior Golf Blueprint fans? Today on the podcast, we got my man, Bill Hassell. He's a coach down in Georgia, teaches alongside Scott Hamilton, PGA Tour coach, and is making a lot of junior golfers better. So, bottom of the show, we talk about the old days back when we were at Mississippi State together and how he got to where he is now. He also has a pretty solid playing background on top of his ability to teach the game. So, take note, follow along, and I hope you enjoy the show. And if you do, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast and check us out on YouTube at Walter Golf Academy. Let's get into this episode.
What's happening, Junior Golf Blueprint fans? Today on the show, I have another Mississippi State grad with me today. His name's Bill Hassell. He coaches with Scott Hamilton down in Cartersville, Georgia. And I've known Bill for a long time. We were in school for a couple years. And since he left, since he's older than me, I'll let him take credit for being older. He went off and has done some really cool stuff with his teaching and playing career. And he is a well-renowned coach in his area down there in Georgia, coaching juniors and college players and the members of the club. But today he's here to entertain us with some great information. But before we get to that, today, Bill, give us a little bit of a rundown. How did you get into the game of golf?
So how long you got?
Yeah, right.
I really grew up, I'd say, in a tennis family. So everybody in my family played tennis, and really I'm a product of the Tiger Woods effect, if you will, because I was, 15 in the year 2000, really honestly not enjoying tennis anymore. And golf was kind of the thing in my family that we did that was fun. And it wasn't the sport you were playing, played everything growing up. And I just, talked with my parents and got the golf bug and said, hey, I want to drop everything and play golf. And they were supportive of that. And then really haven't looked back since then. So, progressed a lot through high school. And, for me, and that's kind of part of the reason that I wanted to coach and teach is, for me, I didn't have, I got pretty good by the time by my senior year. But I didn't have, I'd shot, 68 in a high school tournament. And I was looking for all the Division I coaches to be calling me, but we know now it doesn't really work that way. You've got to have, a resume, you've got to market yourself. So I was kind of in the dark on that portion of it. So that's kind of, part of the reason that I like to teach, but, cruising on past high school, I ended up going to Ole Miss for 2 years. I know that's one of your favorite schools outside of
Liar.
But I went there and did not play golf there, and ended up transferring over to Mississippi State, and we'll call it a 5-year stint there. But I don't know if you want me to pause there or keep going with the story. You just asked me how I got into golf, but I was ready.
Keep rolling. Keep rolling, man. You're doing good.
Fair enough. So really, I think we've got that. I'll have that talk with Jeff where I come over there to the school summer after my sophomore year at Ole Miss. And he kind of scares you with all the work that you're going to have, and that you're really not going to be a college kid anymore because you're going to be working and back in school and back and forth. So, really a challenge kind of laid out on the table, and I really kind of embraced that. But can't thank the program enough just for the professionalism, the experience, the interview experience, the courses you get to work out. When you're out of school, you actually are ready to go to work, where in most professions, when you get out of school, you don't know anything. Not that we knew everything, but you definitely have a leg up on getting the industry. And as you know, the golf business it's a small niche industry. So it's nice to have that. And then, however many years down the road, you get to be on a podcast with your buddy that had chatted with a long time. So that's what's pretty cool about the Mississippi State Network.
No, I mean, I had Adam on not long ago, and we talked about that, and it's always kind of entertaining because, you were a few years older than me in school. And so I was the underclassman to you. And so I looked up to you and what you were doing as far as what I wanted to try and do. Right. And aspire towards, with you and Adam and Doug Farrell and a couple of those guys. Right. And,
sure.
And now, right, like the guy that I did my first internship with in Southwind at Memphis is calling me for references to like build out his driving range. You know what I mean? And I'm like, time out. I was like, I was 19 and got punched in the face while I was on internship with you. Like, why are you looking to me? So, it's awesome. But, you did a couple of cool internships while you were in school, right? You did Pebble and then you did Torrey, and you happened to coincide Torrey with one of maybe the most iconic U.S. Open wins in our era with El Tigre. So, what was that story like?
Really, more of a thank you to my parents. So my parents, I was able to get them tickets on Sunday and Monday. So they were literally in the stands on 18 when everything was happening. I think they were actually there Saturday afternoon as well. So, when you're working the U.S. Open for merchandising, incredible experience, but you're working 100 and 120 hour weeks.
Yeah.
That 11 days is kind of all a blur, but you get an hour lunch break. So for my hour lunch break, I want to just say that I saw Tiger. So it took me like 25 minutes to get where he was at. Wow. And then I saw him and watched him maybe hit 2 shots from like 200 yards away, and then had to cruise back for lunch. But, totally worth it. But after the tournament was over, the whole staff, we got to kind of walk around all the spots where he hit all his shots, and we got to tee it up twice on the course beforehand. So that was just all the excitement, wherever Tiger goes was just, you can't really put it into words, but it's pretty awesome.
No, that's a fact. That was one of the more incredible U.S. Opens ever, I think we've ever watched. And then you have, and I was at Southland for a tour event, not a major. And you're right. Like the 2 weeks leading up to any PGA Tour event is psychedelic. It's like 4 a.m. wake up calls, 8 a.m. close, 8 p.m. going homes, and it's just nuts. And the thing that interests me though, and parents, coaches, and junior golfers all listen to this podcast, but like it didn't sound like you initially sought out internships to coach. So how did where were your head at then, and then how did that change happen?
Yeah, definitely not. That was not my, initial intent getting in the business was to coach. It kind of, transformed, evolved over time. But I did my internships, Jeff would always give us the advice of, kind of go different outlets and see what you like. So, I did private, and then, I wouldn't call Pebble Beach public, but it's, it's a resort.
Right.
And then I did the merchandising. So I got some good experience there. And then went the private club route and worked basically for Wayne Huizinga, John McNeely, worked at Diamond Creek, Floridian, and Frederica. That was all on a seasonal basis, and I taught a little bit there. But the truth be told, when I got to Cartersville, I got the head professional position there. It was my first head pro job, and knew of Scott Hamilton. Didn't know him probably as well as I should have. Kind of did some research. And I love to play, and I wanted to be a better teacher. And it really kind of all fell into place when I got to the club. I got some good advice from one of my former bosses that said, being my first head pro job, I was ready to come in and change everything. I was ready to change the world. I knew all about this club. I knew exactly what they needed. But the reality of it is, any job that's your next job, you don't know what it entails. You just hope for the best and do the best you can. But, I listened a lot, got to kind of build some relationships with the membership. And, really there was a void in junior golf, because Scott was teaching a few members at the time, but, he's been on tour for 20 something years. So there was a void in junior golf, and they wanted me to fill that void. So I started, did the best I could, started to develop some junior camps and some programs, and saw some kids had some success, and, really started to enjoy it. And, 9 years down the road now. So I've been teaching full time for 2 years, but really it's been, even as I was the head pro, I was still teaching 20, 25 hours a week the last 5 or 6 years. So the club was nice enough to let me transition into it, but really just kind of found my passion for teaching by becoming a better teacher and getting those reps and helping kids and seeing their success. And that's been the most gratifying part of my job over any other part of the operation. And, I feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing. So enjoy.
It's interesting because it's not like the way all of us coaches get there, but it's a very common occurrence that there's a void in the instructional blanket. Is typically always ladies or juniors. And, and it's just like, all it takes is like a few success stories. Next thing you know, it pops off, right? And that's, I mean, your story is very similar to mine. I said I never got to the head pro spot. I was still an assistant pro when I was coaching. I was just lucky to have Virgil Herring above me that was mentoring me to coach. And then we just kind of formulated a game plan for me to escape the shop and coach full time. But the same thing though is like junior, like creating programming is, whether it's juniors, ladies, men's, doesn't matter. Programming is the easiest way to get into coaching because you can charge a rate that is, you know, reasonable for both you and them. You can put 6 people in front of you, so you don't have to go astronomical with your numbers like a Scott Hamilton rate for an hour. And you can, you know, you can see 6 different people doing 6 different things and start to learn, right? You know, if you're doing like a 6-on-1 camp, right? But when you started formulating those programs for the juniors and they were starting to see that success, you know, what was it with the planning and the prep and you know, that portion of it? What were you doing that when you create these programs, like what was your program look like? How did it look?
So that's a good question. I mean, honestly, the junior programs, we just got a bunch of kids out there that just got excited about the game. And, you know, a couple kids that would have played other sports picked golf. That kind of the other kids looked up to, and it was a domino effect from there. But, you know, we started doing the PGA Junior League, you know, did a scratch league at the club, you know, anything we can do to get the kids out there enjoying the game. I remember, you know, kids that, you know, I would say my first graduating class, 2 kids have just graduated. So I take the Cartersville High School team. We go on a trip every year. Well, this is actually just our 2nd year to start doing this. But we went down to Old Waverly in Mississippi. Nice. 7 guys on the team down there and had a great time. But, you know, I look back, like looking back at old pictures you'll see on Facebook or something. And these are kids that, you know, I can remember, you know, literally the kid coming in for the first junior camp with his dad out of the car. You know, it's just fun. And we're getting older.
Dude, I tell you, man, I've now personally, I mean, I'm coming up on my 10-year mark, you know, at the end of this year. And it's crazy to think about, but I have a kid now who I started coaching at 13, who's by the time I hit my 10-year mark with the PGA, he'll be graduating college. Right. So I've almost been working with him as long as I've been a pro, and it's awesome. You know what I mean? And you're right. Like you get the old Facebook pop-ups, right? That's probably the only reason why I post a Facebook story anymore, is just to make sure I can have a memory. And it's incredible to watch kids progress and go through that journey like we did. It brings back some memories and stuff like that. But the thing that, you know, always interested me when I talk to coaches is like when, you know, when you're trying to coach, right, there's an element of what you wanted to hear when you were a kid versus what you know now, right? And like, man, if I'd have known this when I was 15, I'd have been so much better. I would have gone to here, you know, maybe nothing, maybe done the same thing. I don't know. But do you find that when you're trying to coach all these different types of kids and all these different types of players, you know, how do you find the best ways to connect so that you're not, you know, telling a young Bill Hassell, but telling, you know, little Johnny what Johnny needs to hear?
I would say a lot of it's, you know, just patience. Like a quick story that, like my first year teaching, you know, with the kids, yeah, I know we all know how important the short game is. And, you know, stats talk about how much more important driving is, but it's still an area where you can improve the fastest in. So I wanted all the kids that I taught to really develop a passion for the short game and really dive into it. And I go to Scott and I'm just pulling my hair out. I'm just losing. I'm like, man, I cannot get these kids to go to the putting green and chip and putt and, you know, trying to incentivize them and get them over there. He's like, well, they're not gonna. I'm like, what do you mean they're not gonna? He's like, they're not gonna go to the putting green until they go out and hit 15 greens and shoot 82 and have the realization themselves that they need to work on it. And I was like, well, that's a really good point. Yeah. So, you know, you still try to push it for them. And I really just continue to encourage them. You know, I think it's the best form of motivation, but, you know, they have to come to it themselves. Anything I can do to encourage and motivate them, I do. But at the end of the day, you know, I look at it as, you know, I feel like I'm pretty self-driven and put a lot of, you know, probably pressure on myself. But at the end of the day, I think when you're teaching golf, you can kind of give yourself too much credit. But if you take all the credit, then you got to take all the blame too. So, it's really up to the kids to take the information you give them and run with it. And the truth is, there will be a few that do, and kudos to those kids for doing that. But we just, on our end, just want to do the best we can with them and encourage them and give them the right information and give them the best chance to succeed. So.
No, you're right. And I make that explicitly clear when I'm coaching is like, when something good happens, I like deflect like instantly, like, I'm just the encyclopedia. I didn't hit the shots. I didn't do the work. I just told you what to do, because of the very reason, because when things go sideways, I then would have to take credit as well. And I'm like, I don't want credit for either.
A kid, they might be, let's say a kid plays, junior golf, think about all the things that junior high or high school kids having to deal with these days. And, they make a stretch and play really good golf. And then, they fire a crazy number. It's like, what happened? Well, maybe they didn't sleep the night before, or maybe they didn't eat breakfast. I mean, it could be a number of things, but it's easy to jump conclusion of what's going on. But really it's just, back to the process. But kids are going to have that kind of ebb and flow as they work their way up. So.
Well, and I think it's always good to like remind kids, right? Like the scoring average of tour is getting lower a little bit every year, it feels like. And, but even still, it's like, let's say it's 68 and you're like up there in the top 10, and they still go out and shoot 62, 63. And it's like, but you average 68. So that means you got to shoot some 70 somethings to back it up. Right.
Got to.
And I think that's something that's really hard for kids to understand, and not even just kids, but I mean like amateur golfers in general. Just because you carry a 6 handicap doesn't mean you're always going to fire a sub 80 round. Like you're just as destined to shoot 83 as you are to shoot 73. You know what I mean? And it's just like the bell curve. Your 6 handicaps, the peak of the bell curve, and you got rounds that are going to go way ahead of you and rounds that are going to go way behind what you want. And I think that's what's tough. But going back to your little short game stuff, I recently just started doing Operation 36, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with them or even used them before, but it's amusing to me because I have high school kids doing it, and it's a beginner program to get kids into the game. But I'm
Sure.
like, I'm going to change it up, make kids shoot 27 instead to make it harder, up to about 100 yards. Cause it's a par 3 course when you start at 25 from the hole, 50 from the hole, and 100 from the hole, right? It's amazing to me how many high school kids like think they're hot stuff from that distance, and they go fire 30 from 50 yards out. And I'm like, hey, bruh, that probably is going to be about 45, 48 at the end of the day if you do that in real golf. Like, what's up? And, I think to your point, though, to credit the short game is like the thing I liked about this program the most is like it's opened a lot of my kids' eyes to the fact that, like, hold up, I am giving shots away from inside of 100. Right. So what are some of the ways that you like to get your kids to, train and prepare maybe in a more of a competitive mode to get ready, and to get better inside of 100 yards?
Mm-hmm. One thing I really want to get better at is, you can always create a better program. And I want my kids to, spend more time with it, have more performance practice. But I think anything that you can, reflect off the tour players you want to use. So one drill that Scott uses with the tour players on the TrackMan, it's really simple. So it's 50 to 80 yards. They're going to hit 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80. They're going to hit those shots in sequence. And they've got a target out in the distance, but they don't have a target at those numbers. They don't have a towel down for 50, 55. And, a tour player, the score they're trying to get is 14, meaning a differential of 2, meaning they're carrying every shot within 2 yards of the target. So, and a college player might be shooting 30 on that. Mm-hmm. So it really gives you how good these guys actually are. But, you see kids on the range. I mean, I sound like a broken record. We all say this, but they're out there striping 7-irons and drivers, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not hitting all those in-between shots and developing those skills they need to. So, performance practice, inside 30 yards, 50% of the time, that would be the tour average, hitting inside 6 feet. Mm-hmm. So, any games they can play and go out there and compete, I'd be a fan of. But I think those benchmarks are great because just like you said with the programs you run, it's something where you're being a good coach by not necessarily going out there and telling them what it is, but just throwing out there and say, okay, here's your benchmark, go do it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that wasn't as good as I thought. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny part, right? Is that I think you said it great at the beginning, right? Until the kid has that moment that's like, oh shoot, I just hit like 15 greens and didn't break 80, right? Like, oh crap, that's when they have to own it, and that's the thing that's hard to explain to parents. So, right, is like eh, parents know that because we're mature. We've developed our brain, hopefully, the whole way, right? And we've kind of can see the bigger picture a lot better than a teenager. And I mean, I know teenage Matt wasn't going to listen. I still struggle with that, and I'm a 32. But the the thing that is tough is to have that conversation. And I think sometimes it's one of those that we have to almost preface to the parents, like, look, you and I both know this, but it doesn't do us any good harping on little Johnny, saying that you need to understand this. Like, Johnny's got to figure it out.
Right. And it just takes time.
That's right. So, getting the chance to be next door to, one of, if not arguably one of the best tour coaches around, who has years of experience, a heck of a stable, in his back pocket. What's it like watching him work with tour professionals versus like an everyday lesson that you would give? I mean, I'd say like there's a big difference, but what's that like?
I would say it's not glamorous. It's very simple, and you have to really know your stuff to keep it really simple. And when you have a tour player walk in there, they can change on a dime. They can make changes really quickly. So if you give them the wrong information, they're just not going to do it. If you give them anything, they're going to hit it 5 yards shorter. They're just not going to do it. So you really have to. Whoops, we still there? Yeah.
Yep.
You really have to know your stuff and simplify it. And it really is that simple. So Scott always says, solve the problem. What's the issue? Solve the problem and go from there. So he doesn't kind of get into this, it's these days, all these players have several coaches, right? They've got swing coach, they've got short game coach, they've got mental coach, they've got yoga coach, they've got so on and so forth. So, I think he's the guy that really comes in and takes charge and simplifies things. And you've seen all the success he's had with, taking guys from a nobody on the web.com or Corn Ferry and making them a PGA Tour winner. So it speaks to what he does. And, teaching me, he's kind of taught me to ask good questions. When I came in originally, I just started firing off questions before I really thought about them. So now I try to take good notes, think about it on my own, and then ask questions from there. And then, he's really taught me also to be willing to reinvest in yourself. I go see, and that's what he did, early on in his career, and, still learning every day, with Gears 3D and swing catalysts and gas force plates and so on and so forth. But, I've invested in myself, going to see a lot of other teachers, and following guys like you on Instagram. Went to see Mark Sweeney, just got back with Tim Yelverton. He helped teach the kids. So yeah, just continually reinvesting in myself for the reason to make the answer simple for the kid when I help them. Yep. So that's kind of a long answer, but yeah.
No, I mean, it's a great point because I actually saw a video last week. It was like Simon, was it Sinek? I forget he does a lot of that motivational talks and like does the corporate things and all that stuff. And he was talking about it's okay to be the idiot in the room, right? And he was giving an example where he was in this board meeting and a guy was giving a presentation and he had to like stop the presentation. Was like, hey, I don't understand what we're talking about here. Can you like go over that again? I'm probably the only one that doesn't get it, blah, 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 blah. And then long story short, by the end of that meeting, like 5-10 minutes later, the rest of the room was like, yeah, we don't know what the heck you're talking about either. Right. And meanwhile, it was supposed to be a whole bunch of business execs that should have understood the material. Right. So
right.
in the game that we coach, right, it's so hard because you can know all of the technical facets and not understand that you're coaching a person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest thing that's like hard to convey to like when I have like, kids come shadow me for coaching. It's like, yes, like I understand material, but at the same time, you have to understand that this is a human being and they can only process so much and they can only do so much for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, solve the problem. I love that because it's like and you know this too, is like when somebody comes in, like, all right, what are we gonna do today? And like they tell you like, well, I think I'm over the top. I think I'm casting. So I'm like, man, let me rewind. What's the ball doing that you don't like? Because I don't really care what you think.
Right. You kind of let them get it out and then ask some good questions. That's where Scott would always start a lesson. That's helped me a bunch is, talk to the person. Especially first lesson, we're going to sit down, we're going to get a baseline for at least 10 or 15 minutes and figure out if the picture they're describing of their game actually fits with what they're doing or not. And ask them the shot shape they want to hit and, kind of what their miss and their make is, and then work from there. But, those are really, simple questions, right? But I try to ask those at the beginning of your lesson and move from there.
Yeah. And, I think that's where, it's interesting because like when I was with Virgil, right, he works with a lot of the top kids in the count in the state, honestly. And then he wasn't really coaching many tour players at the time. He probably had a couple mini guys popping in here and there, but it was always interesting to watch, a Virgil lesson because Virgil was always probably one of the most creative minds I've ever been around. Where like my wife played college golf. He told my wife to lasso cattle at the top, and that's still her swing thought today, 7 years later, right? Like, who knows, right? So what are ways that you're finding yourself when you're coaching? We always seem to like come up with new ways to like spitball ideas around, but what do you do to keep things fresh in your mind that maybe helps you come up with some new ideas, some new ways to get a message across for your kids?
I'd probably just send a shout out here so that, the athletic motion golf. So I stay up to date on all that stuff. And they're always spitting out new drills and new ways to say stuff. And, I'm obviously always peeking the door when Scott's in there teaching. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But, a lot of the times I go back to the same, 8 or 10 drills that you use. But, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different, people need a lot of different ways to tell them to reach them.
Right.
Because they're levels and different brain levels too, if you will. So
sure. No, definitely. I mean, like I like to take their sports background, right? Like you had tennis, right? And so then I'd be like, all right, Bill, this is like your cross court forehand, or this is like your drop shot, you know what I mean? And I think, that's part, like you saying, the interview process at the beginning, you kind of find out the info of, how do they think, how do they process material? And if you take the time as a coach to actually listen to somebody, you can get a pulse on like, all right, this person loves numbers. I probably need to hide that on the screen for a little while. You know what I mean?
Number they're looking for, they're just going to be devastated, right?
Yeah. And, and I heard another interesting, I forget who I was talking to. It might have been Jeff Smith. And it was like, obviously it's bad to compare to anybody to a tour player, right? Because ain't nobody going to do it. Ain't nobody built like anybody else, right? So it's just not even relevant. And so, it kind of caught me off guard because I was like, yeah, I might tell him to like make your left arm look like Justin Thomas, or, set your stance like Sergio or whatever, right? And he goes, well, all they're going to hear is swing like Justin Thomas and swing like Sergio. And I'm like, crap, like you're probably right. So how do you, obviously you have, Scott there with tour players coming in and out, probably up from day to day, and you have kids that hang around that joint. How have you leveraged that to help your junior program to like be like, here's Scott Stallings, watch him do something, blah 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 blah. Have you ever used that to your advantage to help these kids kind of like get a point across?
Honestly, it's just kind of happened. So, for example, Scott Stallings, I was helping a kid on his chipping and pitching this weekend. We were in there early. Stallings was out there early. And I know you just had him on the podcast, and he's always so nice and gracious with his time. And he came in, and we're about to start the chipping and pitching lesson. I said, all right, you got it, man. Dive in there. So, he spends 30, 35 minutes with the kid. And, that's kind of how it happens. They're just out there. When they come in town, they're going to be with Scott for a couple days, not in a hurry, working on whatever they're working on, but they've got time to kind of give back to the kids. So it really just happens organically just by them being out there.
Right.
I'll answer that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's awesome though. I mean, when I was at Vandy before I got to where I'm at now, we had Ben Crane and Brent Snedeker out there practicing a lot, and then you have all the Vandy guys and women playing on the Vanderbilt men's and women's teams, and it was always advantageous for me because I would just be like, here's John Augustine, like watch him, watch how he flights his wedges. Like you're not going to see anybody else hit a wedge shot like John Augustine. Like it's just these little bullets. And at the same breath, right? It's like having that kind of presence around, draws people to you, right? Because they want to be around that. They want to see that. And it creates kind of like a culture. And, that's something that I'm working at here, or trying to achieve over here is to create a culture that allows, kids to develop and grow and become the best that they can. So what's it like, having that around every day and how do you feel like that infects the culture of the junior program?
I would just say it attracts, it's really how I parlayed my business, right? So having Scott there and having, the Scott Hamilton Golf Academy being there naturally with the success of all his tour players and being an instructor under him, junior golfers that want to aspire to be those players would come to me. So, that was a natural progression of that. But, you can always, do better on the culture. I look at, going down to Old Waverly this weekend with Tim Yelverton and VJ. I mean, you can just see it in all the kids. They do such an incredible job, and all the kids are willing to help each other. And, the older kids are playing with the younger kids. And we have that at Cartersville too. And they've been doing it a long time there with their junior program, but definitely want to benchmark some things off the way their culture is down there. It's just such a welcoming, encouraging environment. And they've got a really cool setup too. They've got, a junior golf cottage at the back of the range, a little par 3 area. And it's a pretty cool spot.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's always interesting to watch somebody who's like formulated that whole plan together, right? Because then you're just like sitting there just taking notes. It's just like, man, I like what he's doing here, I like what he's doing there, and then you try and implement back into what you're doing. And I think that's where you kind of say, like, as long as you're trying to educate yourself and trying to improve who you are as a coach, you're doing a service to your student. At the same time, a lesson I gave 5 years ago, I didn't have half the knowledge I have right now. So it's like, you can only do the best you can with what you got, and
Sure.
yeah. And so, when, you're also a well-achieved player, right? You've been a great player since college and you're still playing well. And so when you are out working on your own game and maybe you're going out and playing with some of your kids, how, maybe that's the right question, but like, how do you draw the line between like, I need to work on Bill Hassell's game and I need little Johnny to, get better too?
Yeah. When I go out and play with them, I'm just trying to win, right? Because these kids are good playing more than me. And I don't want to go out there and embarrass myself because, the kids are so good. But I would say, the last 2 years, I guess a little less than 2 years, as I'm teaching full time, the game's taking a back seat.
Mm-hmm.
So not really getting out and playing and practicing a bunch. I look at all the other really good teachers, and they really don't play a lot of golf. All their effort and their energy is towards that. So, there I've kind of had to look in the mirror, sacrifice and say, look, my game's helping all these kids, helping one more kid is going to be more important than my golf game. Yep. Sure, I can hit balls and, anything that I see from another teacher, I'm going to try to implement that and see if I can do it before I go teach a kid that. Yep. But playing wise, really, I just had a goal in my head that because I didn't play college golf, I wanted to kind of prove to myself as a professional that I could play and that I could play at a high level. So, qualifying, I've always had the goal of qualifying for the national championship. I was able to do that in 2019, and that was kind of the beginning of the end of the playing career, if you will. So, but that was.
Well, yeah, and you're right though. I mean, it's tough as a coach. And I have a guy that helps me now coaching junior camps and stuff. And, he's younger. He did the Air Force before, and now he's in school and he's in college locally, and he's starting his book work now. And He's talking about all these playing things he wants to do. And I was like, look, you got to make a decision. It's like, I get you want to play, but at the same time, like what's going to make your bank account full? Is it like your playing career and the playing in PJ section stuff, or is it going to be coaching? Because I'm pretty sure I know what the bank accounts are of the guys that win every week on our PJ section. It's not going to flush your rent.
It's not going to be flush.
And so it's like, it's tough, but at the same time, right, we have to keep our game to a certain level, because I mean, I can tell you how many times I've had a student come up to me and be like, well, I hear you hit it far. I mean, like, prove it. And you're like, whatever, dude, you want to watch 300-yard carry? Here it is. You know what I mean? And like, or like, hey, I hear you're a pretty good player. Let's go play. And you have to like go put up a number, right? You can't go fire 85 and then, justify the ends of the means. So there's definitely a double-edged sword there where you have to practice enough that your game can't suck. Right. But at the same time, and I was telling this to my Philip, the guy that helps me. I was like, look, at the end of the day, people are going to come to you to learn how to hit shots. They're going to come to you to learn, what this swing should look like or how this motion should look like. And so you have to spend time like getting creative. Like if you're going to tell them how to hit a draw, you better be able to stand up and draw that ball on that first swing. Right. And if you're going to get there, you better be able to fade it on that first swing and show them why that happens and how that happens. If you're going to flight a wedge, you better be able to flight that wedge. You can't be throwing up some lobber 60 yards out there, and I think that's where, it's tough is like, where's the line, right? Like I gotta be able to practice and play enough to not look like a joker.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but as golfers and teachers, we've always had that desire always comes back to go play and hit some golf balls. So, and I kind of look at it too, as it's like, it's a season in life, if you will, where, maybe there'll be more time down the road where, I can kind of get fired up for a season and play some section events and stuff. But, like you go back to the end of the day, it's like, so if I win a tournament or play really well, like, who cares? Maybe me and my dad, and that's about it. So, you can have, a lot bigger impact, with them. But, I totally agree with you. You want to stay sharp with your game. You don't want to go out and coach a bunch of good junior players and then hack it around the golf course. So.
Yeah, I mean, if people listen to the podcast, I've told this story before, but it was like I had hip surgeries in 2013, and I kind of fell out from playing for a little bit, and I started to lose like what it was like to like hit shots in tournaments, right? Because I hadn't played in a couple of years, like on my own ball, right? You have all the frou-frou stuff on the section where you can go out there and slap it around or whatever. But so I signed up for the section tournament again, to go play in that, just to, like you said, like just to prove to myself that I could do it, right? Go out, fire 3 decent numbers, finish top 20, content, right? Had a chance. I was 4 shots off the lead going into the last round, and I blew it up in the last round, shot like 74 or something like that, 75 in the last round, to not even sniff qualifying. But I was the low man with the new baby, so that was cool. I didn't know that was a pool that week. There was a pool of golf pros that had new kids with under a year, and there was a pool on who was the low pro for the new dads.
But I can't remember that, but maybe I'm saying.
There you go. And so anyways, but it's like, you're right though. There's an element of like, obviously, like when you coach tour players, unless you played on tour, you have no idea.
Right.
But up until that point, we could tell pretty much every kid, it's like, look, I've been there. I've done that. I know what it needs to take, right? And I think a lot of kids respect that too, when you can stand up there and say, like, look, I understand how you feel, to be excited on the first tee and not feel your hands anymore, or to be 3 shots down with 4 holes to go and try and make a comeback, you know what I mean? And so, when you're coaching your kids in playing in preparation for tournament, right, it's a different element than just working on swing mechanics. Mm-hmm. And so, what are some of the ways that you help your kids? Like you talked about performance practice earlier. What are some of the ways that you get your kids ready to go out there and tee it up? Because we're tournaments have started. I got a kid that already played this weekend, and we're off to the races. So what are you doing to get them ready and rocking?
I always tell them, not all of them take me up on it. I wish they would, but I just encourage them to have a plan, and the plan doesn't have to be complicated, but I encourage all my students before, if they're going to go play a practice round, and I echo it, what off the tour players do is, they're trying to figure out what their start line is for every tee ball, and they're trying to get comfortable with where to hit it and where not to hit it around the greens. The pin locations are probably going to be different from the practice round. So just getting comfortable with the green complexes and the speed of the greens. But I want all my kids not to text in their phone, but I want them to literally write down start line, club you'd use in normal conditions. Obviously, the conditions can vary, and have a plan for the day. It could be as simple as they have all their start lines. Okay, today's going to be windy and wet. Par's a good score. On the flip side, if it's, super firm and fast, the greens are sloped hard, back to front, let's keep it below the hole.
Right.
It can be really simple things, but I think so often the kid, gets so hyped up. I can remember, and it's a learning process too, but I can remember in school when I first got the golf bug, I'm in school and I'm in class, and I've decided that when I go out to play that afternoon that I'm never going to miss a shot again. I had thought in my head that I have finally solved golf. Like I had figured it out. And as you know, Palmer says, bet that person for everything they have. And I think I went double. So it's a give and take. It's a give and Scott talks about this a lot. It's like you care so much. It's you want to do well so bad you don't play well. Mm-hmm. And then there's a difference between that and just not caring at all. There's kind of that happy medium. Mm-hmm. But I think with kids, I'd say too, is it's like it doesn't need to be the only thing you think about. It doesn't need to be, your sole purpose. There needs to be more to it than that. So, I just think that's important because when kids put all their chips in the basket, they see that scoreboard. And we know we all do it, right? And that number is attached to them, but they need to learn over time how to separate that because they're going to have their good days and bad days. That doesn't mean they're a good golfer or a bad golfer. It means their golf game that day wasn't as good or so on and so forth, but it's not them. So I think that's
having other things around you, like the extracurriculars, if you will, is important because it gives you value outside of the game. Right. And like you said, like, obviously it means something, right. And that's good. You want it to mean something to you, but at the same time, it's like, if it defines you, you have a problem. Like if you're defined by the number that's on that leaderboard, that is not good because then you live and die by the sword at that point. Right. And it's just a step or a cog in the wheel, a step on the journey. It's just the number on the scoreboard is just literally feedback. And I think that's where the players that get it know that. Like every shot is just feedback. Every number you put up is feedback of like where you're at, what you need to do to improve, or maybe you had the round of your life and you just need to go celebrate the dang thing. And I mean, I can't tell you how many kids I've had to like convince to be like, they go out and, shoot their career around. Yeah, they're excited. I'm like, hey man, like go enjoy that. Like, it's okay. Like you can enjoy this, like quit, but they'll come in, but oh man, but if I'd have made this putt, if I wouldn't have 3-putt that, I'm like, you realize you just beat your best record score by like 4 shots, right? And you're going to tell me about the bad stuff. Like what are you doing?
100%. Always try to, if I'm talking with a kid about a round, I always try to ask him, whether it was good or bad, tell me about a few good shots because we quickly, go to the bad shots in the round. So tell me about the few good shots, build off those. And also, there's winning and there's learning. And I also try to put in front of the kids different ideas of, when players make it and when they peak. It's not all at the same time, right? I think a lot of them have in their head, a lot of juniors have in their head is, I've got to get to college golf. I've got to play on a good team. Well, what about after that? Like what's going to happen with you after that? Like, let's put you in a place where, you can go play and that you can get better. That's more important than the name of the school you're going to play at. Because, ultimately I hope that you love golf and you want to play golf and, that's why you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's important. And I think, there's a lot of different ways to get there. Right. I mean, I think that's the big key. And I think too many kids put pressure to get the Vanderbilt, scholarship. Right. I mean, bro, I'm telling you, that is just as hard as making it on tour. You think about how many kids are trying to play and it's, there's so many opportunities to go play after high school. Like you don't have to play Division I. You can play, like I would argue your best Division II team could beat probably the bottom half of the Division I teams, And so, when you look at the big picture and you're having these conversations with parents and kids, what kind of like, I call them like parent teacher conferences almost, right? Like how are you making sure everybody's on the same page? Because that's a difficult task, and it's not always accomplished, and it's not always the easiest conversations.
Man, I think that's a really tough one. I could probably do a better job on that. I think, creating, obviously, a parent, it's their child, right? We're in the other lane, but I think everybody staying in their lanes is really important. I think a lot of times maybe the parent's perspective is like, okay, we're going to come here for a lesson. Bill's going to give you like your swing technique stuff, and then I'm going to coach you. And then I'm going to coach you because I know I'm just giving a scenario here. This is not how it works, but I think a lot of it, they just don't necessarily, I don't know, respect's not the right word, but realize that you're a coach and that, yes, there are swing pieces, but everything I'm telling you in the lesson is important. When I tell you, I need you to go train like this, I need you to go to these drills, I need you to be patient in a golf tournament. And on top of the technique, like, you need to kind of listen to me on all those fronts, not the technique piece and so on and so forth. And I think that would just be a message to the parents is, I'm totally fine with the parent, repeating what I'm saying to the kid, but ad libs and let's not do that piece of it is only hurting that triangle that we need to have. Right. So for them, at the end of the day, I just control what I can control. And I try to, do my best with that kid when they're there and tell them the right information. And then from after that, the ball's kind of my court.
Yeah. And, I think like, part of that interview process, you do at the beginning, right? I do the same kind of stuff. Like when the kid first shows up, or maybe we do like they catch me at 10 minutes for lunch or something like that. I kind of lay it out for both of them. It's like, here's the thing, right? You want the best for your kid. I want the best for your kid. It's not my kid, but I want the best for your kid. And having two kids of my own, a third almost at the door, it's like, I get the other side of it. Like you want to see your kids succeed. You don't want to see them struggle. You want them to understand. You want them to be able to do those things. Like I get it. You know what I mean? Like my kid's in gymnastics and he's trying to like, flip over a bar, right? And he's scared or whatever, right? You want to see him succeed. But what I tell them when we have those interviews is like, look, here's the deal, right? You're paying me to give you information, and my information is unbiased because I don't love your kid like you love your kid. And so I can say the things that nobody wants to hear. Like your kid's not doing his end of the job, or your kid's doing a great job of putting in the hours, but maybe not the quality. Right. And you're going to say things that I might say things that are going to hurt your feelings. At the same breath, I reward effort. If you show me you're putting in all the effort, but we haven't gotten a result yet, then I'll put it on me to figure out what the difference is. Like, why are we not getting results out of it when you're putting in your end of the deal, right? Is it you shot 9 under, but some kids shot 13 under? What are you going to do about that? You know what I mean? You still shot 9 under. That's still pretty good, at the same day. So I think that's where, I've had a lot of heartbreak and learning lessons as a coach. And it's like, you can't get so close, you can't speak the truth. But at the same time, it's inevitable that you get close because you're spending hours with these kids and you're becoming a part of the journey. And I think that's what's where, and then, you have good relationships with parents, you have bad relationships with parents. I mean, I kind of like put them all like on the, we have like green, yellow, and red lights on targets, right? I got green parents, I got yellow parents, I got red parents. You know what I mean? You're on the watch list there, homeboy.
Might have to use that.
Yeah. I mean, like there's the watch list parents where it's going to be like, all right, I might have to have a conversation or two with this one, and then there's others where like, this guy gets it. I don't have to worry about this. And, and I think sometimes it's always tough because we coach a sport where everybody can play. And the parent could be a 15 handicap that thinks he knows how this kid's going to get to college. And you're like, go break 80 for me tomorrow and show me something.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe no further comments on that.
Well, I did when I was talking to Sky, he talked about the paying chair and the talking chair from Hamilton. I love that a lot.
That's gold.
I got
the talking chair.
That's right. I love it, dude. I'm going to go spray paint my chairs in my office right now and just spray paint like in like the prison block lettering paying chair.
So good.
Well, Bill, to not take up much more of your time today, as I know you probably got a busy day ahead of you. I always like to kind of wrap up the show with, one last little nugget of information for the viewers. And it's basically, if you could say or do one last thing that help your kids, or to, give another, or to tell yourself 10 years ago, something motivational, something to, inspire you to be the best version of yourself, what would that message be? And, what would you put on that billboard?
That's a good one. I would just say, that maybe really can I say a couple things?
Sure.
I would just say, when you're done learning, you're done. So, anybody it's nice to have a really talented kid walk in the door and help them, but you want somebody that continually wants to learn. That's our job to make sure they continue to grow. But, don't get complacent and think that, you don't need more to learn to get better at the game. And the other thing I'd just say is, it's really simple. I always start my lesson. I was like, treat people the way you want to be treated, because it is more than golf. And, I just think that's important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Virgil used to,
and I fail it every day, but
I understand that. Virgil talks about, Arnold Palmer had a thing about, you want to fill up the church at your funeral, right? Like, and Palmer, when he passed away, had I think they had 3 churches full of people, there to view his funeral service. And it's like, that was something that kind of registered in my head. It was like, I might coach this kid for 4 years. I might coach this kid forever. I might coach this kid for a week, or adult or whatever. And it's like, I want to make sure that no matter how the lesson goes, right, that there was something more back behind that, right? That they know that I'm, accessible as a friend. I'm accessible as a person that, if they need something besides golf, I can, help. Right. And I think that's where, as a coach, you don't always have lessons of, mechanics. I've had stories of adults and juniors that have walked through that door and we haven't hit a shot for an hour. And it was just strictly conversations because something jacked up happened in their life. And it was like, they try to hit a couple balls and I'm like, all right, what's going on? There's something else to this pie right now. And,
sure.
And sometimes you have to do that. And, and you don't, they don't tell you that PGM school when you're trying to be a teacher.
Yeah, that's not PGA teaching manual there.
That PGA teaching man was older than me, man.
Yeah.
The guy that's doing Philip that's doing his stuff right now, I was like, you don't even understand. He's asking me about what I did. It's not relevant what I did. The teaching manual was 1986. I was born in 89. I said, I got a 50-pound box of books and binders that I had to lug around for 4.5 years in the back of a Volvo as I traveled between internships. I'm like, dude, your stuff's online. You're good.
100%.
All right. Well, Mr. Hassell, what are some of the best ways people find you and connect with you online when they listen to the show? How can they follow what you're doing?
On Instagram, Bill Hassell Golf, on Facebook as well. I know that's ancient these days. They can get me through email or cell for lessons. So that's all available on my stuff. So, accessible.
Awesome. Bill, thank you for your time today, boss. Appreciate it.
Matt, thanks so much. Appreciate what you do.